If you guessed that this next segment is about Bill Maher's Uniparty Roundtable, you guessed correct. What do I win, Dustin? Well, you win this clip of Bill Maher and a bunch of out-of-touch boomers talking about politics. Now, you know all the stuff that we just covered, and we're going to go into the weeds even further after this. But I think it's important that that for me especially, because I used to watch all these people religiously. I used to watch Bill Maher. I could not wait for Bill Maher's Real Time to come on. And I actually watched this one. We're just going to play some of the overtime. It's YouTube friendly. But I watched most of this episode and I wanted to throw up through most of it. Now, to give Bill Maher a little bit of credit, I am thankful that there are voices like him in the mainstream, because while he doesn't get everything right, he does get some things right. And I think that he speaks to a little bit more of the serious types, and like once and he's at least outside of the ecosystem of MSNBC enough that he can break through, right? So a good example is on the COVID stuff. I think Bill Maher's been really good about being like, what the fuck, guys? Come on. Like, you're not going to be skeptical about this. So good for him on that. Good for him. The Russiagate thing, on the other hand, he's totally doesn't get, which in his case, it's a little bit different. He has a personal vendetta with Trump. Like, Trump sued him for calling him an orangutan, and there's a whole history there and whatever. So I'll give him a teeny bit of a pass on that. And I've heard him say things like in the Carville interview, he said some things that were like, okay, he does, like with the E. Jean Carroll thing. With that case, Bill Maher was kind of like, no, it's just people saying things. And so he does see a little bit beyond his nose sometimes. This did not reassure me. But this even has some positive elements in it. So the guests on Bill's show for this, and I call it the Uniparty Roundtable, were Bret Stephens, who's a right-wing conservative that writes for the New York Times, and Paul Begala, who is an old school Democrat consultant like James Carville, who worked for the Clintons. So these are your two voices of, and then he opens with Alexandra Pelosi, the propagandist, literally a fucking propagandist. She calls herself a documentarian, but she's a propagandist. But anyway, let's kind of throw up with me here on this roundtable.
We have CNN contributor and Democratic strategist Paul Begala, and these are the questions hot off the press. I hold in my hand well, not that you just do Karnak and fuck with their minds. Okay. Should Rashida Tlaib... Oh, yes.
No one's going to get that, Bill.
Rashida Tlaib...
Johnny Carson reference.
By the way, still has
now
not
listen to
acknowledged
this.
that the missile that killed the...
I was actually pretty surprised with this.
Israeli missile, still telling the lie. Should she be forced to take down the Palestinian flag flying outside her office? Yeah, I saw that picture. Oh, there you have it.
No, the answer is no.
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 Yeah,
I mean, I despise her political views, but absolutely not. She's an American. She can do whatever she wants.
But okay.
And I mean,
this is the American Congress. Has this been done before? Do other people?
I was impressed by that. And that's because he's a conservative, because liberals would not have that answer. But props to Bret Stephens for saying that, because yeah, it doesn't matter if you agree with her or not. I thought we lived in a fucking free country. I sound like Randy from South Park, or one of those angry fucking patriots. I thought this was America. I mean, if you don't sound like that at this point, what's wrong with you, right? But keep listening to this.
People come from different countries. Do they then fly the? I mean, there's
goes
plenty of people,
right
I'm
here.
sure, who have heritage from Mexico. Do they put the Mexican flag outside their office?
I think voters should make judgments about her political choices, but I think it's the essence of a democracy that you can fly the flags that you
Where do you stand on this one?
I'm not touching that.
You're not touching.
That's principled. That's principled. Now listen to what the rest of these fucking idiots say.
Well, you are afraid to get
But-
canceled.
But
What
I
does your
will
mom
say,
think?
wait, but here's the thing. I will go into, I support the whole concept of free speech, right? And one of the main things I talk about in my movie is about when does free speech become hate speech? And when do we go after people and call it hate speech? This was where the whole thing about getting canceled comes from. Like, I'm afraid to talk about that because I don't want to get canceled. That's, people are going to say it's hate speech.
Well, what? Okay.
Why don't we just call it
Yeah.
shitty speech?
Yeah,
It's-
I'm not.
It's in the eye of the hate speech is a concept that's always in the eye of the beholder.
I agree.
Hate
I've
speech
never.
is speech that I hate. So
Right.
don't say anything I
Right.
disagree
Right,
with.
but there's this whole thing called free speech, but who
Right.
cares if nobody's listening? We're not listening to each other, so who cares?
Okay. That is one of the absolute fucking dumbest points I have ever heard made ever.
Why don't you go back to your home on Whore Island?
No, we're not listening to each other, so who cares? Why does it matter? Since we're not listening to each other, why does free speech even matter?
Hello?
I've never been in love with the concept of looking into people's minds when they commit crimes. It's a crime. You need to pay for it if you committed the crime.
What's a crime, Bill? Hanging up a flag outside your office in support of a cause because you don't like it? It's a crime? Listen to yourselves, you dumb ass neoliberal stooges.
Why you did it? I don't know. That gets into crazy kind of territory of thought crimes.
Right,
Which is
okay. Exactly where we don't want to go.
But yeah, I agree. She can fly the flag anywhere. But what does it say about, your? It just seems like your
Let the
loyalties
voters
are a
vote.
little too
I
divided.
agree, and let the voters of Michigan
Okay.
draw their conclusions next year. I know how I would vote if I were in her district.
Let the voters of Michigan decide. Yeah, Dearborn, Michigan is a very heavy Muslim state that probably has a lot of Palestinian refugees and supports Palestine. So yeah, let the voters decide.
But,
I agree.
Absolutely, I'm going to stand up for her right to
Okay.
speak her mind.
What do you think of Putin's
And
meeting with
again,
Xi? That's right.
cheers
Putin-
to Mr. Brett Stevens for being consistent. I mean, I will give him credit, which is I don't agree with the guy on most things, but at least he's right on that. And I applaud him for that.
Russia and Xi of China. Boy, these two, they like have friendship bracelets. One says, one says fuck and the other says America,
Now it's interesting for as intellectual as Bill Maher tries to position himself, how stupid he sounds on this issue. So how unread and just dumb he sounds when it comes to this issue.
forming a new axis of evil. Boy, I mean, you go, but it's weird because China and Russia were always at each other's throats.
It's weird. It's weird. Hey, Bill.
What's the weather like on your planet?
And Putin has this sort of fanboy appeal to the far right in the Republic of Joe. What?
Hey, Paul.
What's the weather like on your planet?
Of Republicans, which I find astonishing because they'll tell you they hate the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, good. I'm with you, buddy. But they love Putin. By the way, Putin was meeting with Sheikh Nasrallah.
They don't love Putin. They don't see him as the villain that everyone else who's been propagandized by the war profiteering corporate media in the United States does. It's just like the anti-Semitic thing. A criticism of Israel is not a criticism of Semitic people. Arabs are Semitic people. God, these people are stupid.
Oh, the head of Hezbollah.
On purpose.
Right. Like he is behind all of the worst things and the worst people in the world,
And I think this is
yet they love him.
something Biden deeply gets, which is that
Putin is behind all of the worst things and the worst people in the world. Is he really? Is there proof of that? How do these guys just get to say this shit? And what I love is any criticism or anything that breaks the narrative is propaganda, but that's not propaganda.
Dictators by nature unite. Whatever their geopolitical differences,
Right.
they are birds of a feather. They see themselves as authoritarians who want to destroy the free world, and that's why it's important to have leaders in the free world who recognize what the threat they pose. Hamas, Iran, China, Russia, North Korea, they all have something in common.
What did Nazi Germany and Japan really?
So do you see the theme here? Brett Stevens, a very conservative, writer for the New York Times, literally billed as like one of their conservative writers, is the most sensible person at a table full of Democrats. Alexandra Pelosi and Paul Begala are old school Democrats. Bill Maher is an old school liberal. He's a hardcore Democrat. It's three Democrats, and the only one at the table that makes any sense at all is the right-wing conservative. That's how terrible our fucking political discourse in this country has gotten. That's how stupid the Democrats are.
have in common, except, oh, we're the bad guys.
See, and again, listen to that. That's how this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. One of the dumbest things I've ever heard Bill Maher say. Let's listen to that again. Listen to this.
Nazi Germany and Japan really have in common, except, oh, we're the bad guys. That's right. You're right. There was really, I guess,
So anyone that's opposed to the United States is just going to get together because they're the bad guys. We're not the bad guys. We're never the bad guys. We're always the good guys. And anyone who does anything outside of our field of control is bad.
plan? Was there ever even a plan? We're going to divide up the world. We're going to conquer each our halves, and then obviously they would have turned on each other like Hitler turned on Stalin. It's weird. Do you think Mitt Romney is right to blame Fox News and right-wing media for radicalizing the GOP?
That's the view. I mean, then they talk about Mitt Romney and how dumb he is, as if they're not the same level of intellect when it comes to these issues. But I just wanted to show that to illustrate the point again that these people have no clue what's going on because the media that they consume, they don't challenge themselves, and everything that speaks to any kind of factual basis outside of the mainstream is labeled as Russian or propaganda of some sort. And so they live within this American echo chamber. You heard him. He still fucking sees the world through the lens of World War II. He's talking about Hitler and Stalin. Like we still live in that world of, it's almost 100 years ago now. 80 years ago was what, like, World War II, basically. 1940, that's 60 plus 20. I'm doing quick math here. 2020, so 80 years basically, right? Am I right? Since World War II. I'm roughly speaking. And this is the headspace these people still live in, a headspace from 80 years ago that totally writes off events like Vietnam and Iraq and Korea and Libya and Syria and Afghanistan the first time and Afghanistan the second time and Iraq the second time. And so they live in it because all that's the genius of the media's maneuvering with Trump is it has made guys like Bill Maher into mindless, stupefied corporate media zombies who understand very little of what's really going on. And again, boomer time with out of touch Hollywood guy, so accurate. Slosa, very, very much Slosa. Stunning lack. Well, actually, it's like stunning lack of any awareness